storm on Capitol Hill right now. That one has to do with the deadly attack on the U.S. Embassy in Libya. UN Ambassador Susan Rice has been at the center of that storm, and several top Republicans are threatening to block any potential nomination to lead the State Department following her comments about the attack on several Sunday talk shows. Last night on Hardball, one leading GOP moderate suggesting Ambassador Rice should have never put herself in the position she's in.
Frankly, I think the UN ambassador, along with the Secretary of State, should be above politics, and that she should have just said, no, I'm not going to go on those shows. It's the wrong issue and the wrong time of year. I've got to maintain my credibility.
All right, so speaking with me just moments ago, Democratic Senator Ken Conrad giving his stern message to those GOP senators who are going after the UN ambassador.
To go after Susan Rice is totally and completely unfair, and those who are doing it repeatedly ought to back off. They ought to back off. That is not where fault lies.
Joining me now is former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. Sir, it's great to have you with me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tom.
You know, you were the American ambassador to the UN. Do you think that Susan Collins has a point when she says that Ambassador Rice should have stayed out of this, should stay above politics? Or do you think that it's senators like Collins, like John McCain or Lindsey Graham, Kelly Ayotte, that are pulling Ambassador Rice into the political fray?
Well, my first view is the Secretary of State, the UN ambassador, traditionally don't get into domestic politics. They don't attend fundraisers. They don't campaign. However, they do and should speak before news shows to disseminate information about foreign policy to the American people. So to say that she should stay off news shows, which are Sunday, which are informative to the public, yes, there's politics there, is incorrect. The president needs the chief foreign policy spokesperson for his administration, and that's the Secretary of State, and then secondarily, it's the UN ambassador. So I partially agree with the senator. They should stay out of domestic politics, but not when an issue like this comes up that the American people deserve some kind of an explanation.
Is it fair that she's caught in the crosshairs about what the intelligence was at the time and what was able to be passed along, disseminated to the public within that many days after the attack in Benghazi?
Yeah, I think there's too much focus on the crosshairs. Now, if the president is going to nominate Ambassador Rice, it should be on her qualifications, and she's got terrific qualifications. She's a Rhodes Scholar. She was Assistant Secretary of Africa when I was at the UN. She was in her 30s at the time. She's been a distinguished ambassador of the UN. She was the architect of the resolutions on sanctions on North Korea, on Libya. She's an outstanding diplomat, a scholar. I think those should be the main questions that she's asked if the president decides to nominate her for president, for Secretary of State, instead of a preemptive attack on some issues where she was simply reading and following an intelligence analyst's view of what had happened in Benghazi.
Sir, if we look back over her time in service, just days before your term as UN ambassador was over, the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania were bombed, leaving over 200 dead, including 12 Americans. And Susan Rice is certainly feeling heat over that role in security issues about those embassies. As you pointed out, Rice was the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs within the Clinton administration at that time. So what is your response to those attacks of Susan Rice, calling those incidents into question present day?
Well, Assistant Secretary of Africa handles policy towards Africa, policy towards Kenya, towards South Africa, Sudan. An assistant secretary is not intimately involved with security, and this in this case was a terrorist attack. Yes, she's aware of some of the issues, but that's not her direct responsibility. She's worried about American policy. At the time, we were dealing with a lot of issues in Congo, Mobutu, Kabila, a number of peacekeeping operations in Africa. I'm not saying she shouldn't be aware of security issues, but this is not a matter that a policy person directly has responsibility. And so you are, I think, unfairly targeting her on those issues also.
Former Governor Bill Richardson. Sir, it's always great to have you on. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Tom.